What's up guys, Jeff Cavaliere, AthleanX.com. Whether you're looking for a way to quicken up that workout of yours and make it more time efficient, or you're just looking for a way to get your gains a little faster, you're gonna wanna watch this video because I put together for you the 12 best supersets, 12 exercises paired up back to back that everybody should have in their programs. Let's start breaking them down one by one. And the first one up is one you just need a pair of dumbbells and a bench for. And what I want you to notice right away is we're looking for space-efficient, time-efficient combinations. I don't want just any two exercises done back to back. Most people do that when they choose supersets. We want a purpose for them. So for us, the first one here is a static dumbbell bench press into a dumbbell gorilla row. I happen to like this a lot because it feels good on my already torn labrum. With that extra control and the slow pace that I can bring one arm down at a time, it gives me the stability while still allowing me to train for strength and train for size. Now, as soon as I'm done here, I put the dumbbells down and talk about space efficiency. I can just grab the dumbbell and get into this row position and start doing our gorilla row. Again, you can't be running back and forth between a pull-up bar and a bench press because likely by the time you get back from the pull-up bar, someone stole your bench. Good supersets are structured in a way that allow you to bounce back and forth between the exercises with minimal time wastage and most of all, effectiveness of the pairing of the exercises that you choose. Now here in our second superset, instead of starting with chest and going to back, we can actually go the other way around and go from back to chest. And one of my favorite ways to do that is with this cable machine in a wraparound row kicking it off. And this exercise is one that actually allows us to target the hard to hit middle traps really, really well. You get that good initial stretch on this hard to hit area, which sets it up for a nice contraction if we keep the elbows nice and tight to our sides. Now keep in mind, there's no strict rule that says you have to choose opposing muscle groups. I'm gonna actually share with you a few of them that are done with the same muscle group, but with a different exercise. But here it just works out really nicely because as soon as I'm done with this, I just simply turn my body around and I'm in perfect position to do a cable crossover and hit the chest. And what I want to point out here that makes these 12 really, really effective is that the weight that you'll generally use on the first exercise is one that will probably be used and useful on the second exercise without even having to swap the weights. Now on a cable machine here, obviously it's very easy to just slide the pin, as you'll see me do soon, but this one and many others in this selection of 12 are going to afford you that opportunity to not have to waste time changing weights and just get from one to the next. And that brings us to combination 3, where we get to hit the arms, stay right here on the cable machine, and just lower the arm down. And we do this with a combination of a cable curl and a standing overhead tricep extension. Now the cable curl is one of my favorite ways to hit not just the biceps, but really the whole upper arm, because I can hit the brachialis by starting in this neutral grip hand position. And what I do is turn up against the resistance of the rope at the top to overload the supination, get the biceps really heavily involved in the exercise. And again, the weights here should probably match up pretty evenly when you go to turn your body around and perform this overhead tricep extension. And one thing I want to point out is the position of your torso when you do the exercise and the effect that that has on optimizing the stretch on your triceps long head, which we know accounts for the majority of the size in the back of your arm. Again, this is another example of being space efficient and respectful in your own gym. All you gotta do is turn your body around 180 degrees to go from one exercise to the other, and you're not busting up anybody else's workouts, but you're still getting the gains that you're looking for. And sticking with the arms, and this time flipping the script to go triceps into biceps, all we need to do is get ourselves to an incline bench and do this combination. It starts with the lying tricep extension done on an incline. The incline bench gives us a chance to get a really good deep stretch on that tricep long head. And once again, as an epitome of efficiency, all we have to do is change our body in space and not even the weight to roll right into the next exercise, which is the dumbbell spider curl for the biceps. And see, again, if you choose exercises that pair up nicely in terms of the load, you can take each part of these to failure and not have to worry about necessarily the exact rep that you're failing on, just as long as you take both ends of it to failure and the weight is similarly matched up, biceps and triceps. On the spider curl, by the way, I really like this exercise because it allows me to get that good peak contraction with the shoulders and slight flexion, and of course the supination and flexion of the elbow at the top. If ever there was an exercise that allowed me to feel that really intense squeeze, this is it. And of course, paired up with the first end of the superset, it's a winner for me every single time. Now, whether you train with supersets or you don't right now, it's certainly no excuse to skip leg day. As a matter of fact, it's a good excuse not to skip leg day because we could choose exercises that flow very well together, anterior chain and posterior chain, like this combination. And we start with one of my favorite exercises of all time, is the dumbbell reverse lunge. And as I point out every time I talk about this exercise, taking that step backwards is just natural. It feels a hell of a lot better for the majority of people, particularly those that might have some knee issues or hip issues when they perform the standard stepping forward version of this. But what I want you to make sure of is that you're taking that step backwards and out so you keep that base of support wide and never let your balance compromise the results that you can see from this amazing leg exercise. Now from here, again, time efficient, space efficient, loading properly, I can just go right into a dumbbell RDL. Allow the knees to soften as you bend them just a little bit and keep the dumbbells nice and tight to your body to take any stress off of the low back. And most importantly, drive yourself up, not by lifting with the low back or pulling the dumbbells up. You keep those arms hanging straight down. You just drive your glutes straight ahead. This is one of those amazing leg exercise combinations that actually isn't compromised by the very fact that you're choosing dumbbells to load it. I know barbells are great, but dumbbells executed well or with the right exercise choices are going to be able to provide the stimulus you need to grow bigger legs without compromise. And so while we're not done with the legs, I do want to shift our focus back to the upper body, and this time into the vertical pressing exercises, and we're talking about the shoulders, and we start with one of the classics, a dumbbell overhead press. I talked about many times before why I like the dumbbell variation of the exercise, and again, don't see it as a compromise to the barbell variation, but we can follow this up too, like we've done with all the other supersets, with a really good, effective exercise choice that doesn't have to allow us to waste time going back to change the weights that we're actually using. So we do the overhead press and immediately drop those weights down to your sides and perform an exercise I call the hip hugger. You're looking to literally drag those dumbbells and hug your hips up your sides on the way up. But I want you to focus your attention on what's happening to the elbows and the arm above. They're driving back into extension behind the body, but at the same time into abduction away from the body. What does that do? It effectively targets the rear delt and the middle delt, respectively. Remember, supersets are going to be limited to 2 exercises, but if those 2 exercises are carefully chosen, 2 exercises is more than enough. But with good supersets, we don't always have to start at the heavy end of the rack to make them effective. We can actually start down here and kick it off with an isolation exercise that leads into a fatigued compound exercise, like this one. What we do here is a dumbbell L raise. I've shown you this exercise before. It's really, really effective because it hits both the front and the middle delt on alternating reps. With one arm going out to the front, we're going to focus on the front delt, and with the arm going out to the side, we're going to more effectively hit the middle delt. Now the goal here is to create that isolated tension on each area of the shoulder in this first exercise. There's no compromise here, because when we go into the next portion here with 0 rest, it's going to feel a hell of a lot harder. Why? Because of the fatigue that we cause in the pre-exhaustion part of that first half of the superset. Remember, there's so many different purposes of supersets. The end result of this one is the weight that you have in your hands is now likely going to be appropriate for about a 10 to 12 rep overhead press. Remember, the muscles can't count the number on the side of the dumbbell. All they can do is feel the tension that you drive into them. If you do the superset correctly here, you're going to do exactly that and get the gains that you're looking for in just 2 well-selected exercises. Of course, supersets do not have to exclude ab exercises, especially if they're remembered to be paired up with the other side of the core. We're talking about your low back. See, if we can create that circumferential strength around your entire core, well, we have a great superset. And the first part of it is going to be this seated knee tuck. You have to remember to try to lift the pelvis as well, though. Don't just try to flip your knees back and forth, but remember to curl the pelvis into a posterior tilt if possible to engage those lower abs the best. In other words, round that ass off of the bench if you can. Now, while I'm happy you're remembering to train your abs, as a physical therapist, I can tell you the other side means just as much to me. We're talking about the low back. So all you have to do is just flip your body over onto the bench and do this part of it, which is the reverse hyperextension. These reverse hypers are an amazing way to not just train your low back, but initiate through the glutes. I talk about all the time how the glutes have the ability to offload the low back and prevent unnecessary strain and overuse if you know how to fire them properly. And remember, this bodyweight pairing doesn't even require any bench at all if you don't have one. You could actually do it on the edge of your bed at home. Just remember to do it, and by that I mean both parts of it. And so we've talked about agonist and antagonist pairings when it comes to muscle groups in a superset. Well, we also have something called the complementary superset. And one of my favorite things to do after a squat is to get away from the squat bar and actually utilize the pull-up bar that's oftentimes right behind you in the rack to deload the spine. We just do a dead arm hang. So when we get in this position, we get a nice, natural, gravity-assisted decompression from T1 all the way down to the sacrum. And this is good because it doesn't require really any effort. There's no additional fatigue that's going to happen here by doing this in between your sets of squats. But what you will get is that temporary unloading or, again, decompression of the spine that might come from having that bar on your back, particularly as you get to heavier and heavier weights. Remember, great supersets are not always so bro-focused. Having an amplification effect on the exercise that you do that precedes the second part is actually one of the best ways we can think about them if we want to get new gains from exercises that we may have stalled out on already. And so guys, remember, pissing people off in the pursuit of poorly selected supersets is not a good idea. Holy shit, say that 3 times fast. The point is, supersets are supposed to have a purpose, and this incline bench gives me a purpose for one of my favorite combinations, and it starts with an incline dumbbell bench press. Remember to set that angle of the bench down at about 30 degrees rather than any higher than that, particularly because it's going to compromise the effectiveness of the back end of this superset, which, by the way, happens to be with just another change of the body positioning to invert yourself on the bench and perform a heavy chest-supported row. Once again, the beauty of this particular combination is that the weight that you choose that will likely challenge you in around the 10 to 12 rep range is also going to challenge you, if not even a little bit extra, in that chest-supported row. It depends on how balanced you are in developing the muscle strength between the front and the back sides. The point is, as has been demonstrated throughout all the other selections here, there's a smart and simple transition that can be made that doesn't waste any time. Remember, an effective superset allows you to transition between the first and the second exercise very quickly without pissing anybody else off in the process. Now, I mentioned earlier that not every superset is going to match up the load that's going to be appropriate for both parts of the superset. But it's no big deal when you're using a cable machine, because we're talking about a simple 3-second shift in the pin either up or down the stack. And one of my favorite exercises here to hit a large portion of the back in an agonist way is going to be the straight arm pushdown, kicking off into my favorite beloved face pull. So with the straight arm pushdown, we're getting that really good focused contraction on the lats. We also have the strengthening of that straight arm scapular strength that a lot of us tend to overlook in our programs, making this another reason why you want to include it in all of your programs. And it leads right into the second half of the combination, my favorite face pull, with just that small little adjustment in the stack to prepare myself to do it. As you guys know, I pointed out the many, many benefits of this exercise in the past. I hope by now you believe me and have adopted this into whatever workout program you're doing, superset or not. But when you do it on the back end of this one here, it shifts the focus from the sides and the lats up into that upper back, rear delts, and mid-scap area to really round out the development in those pulling muscles that just don't get the love and attention that our pushers do. And then as promised, we're back to the legs for one of my favorite combinations in existence, and we use just a little bit of extra resistance with a resistance band. And we start with this dumbbell Spanish squat. And I share this with you in our 100 leg workout you're going to want to check out if you haven't already done so. And what's great about this exercise is it gives us that overload into terminal knee extension in a closed chain way. In other words, our feet are in contact with the floor. Leg extensions are one of the most common ways that people tend to overload this knee extension element. However, after you try this, you're going to probably want to start mixing this in, especially when you pair it up with the back end of the superset. One of my other favorite exercises, which is a kneeling hip thrust. You don't need to have a barbell on your waist to do an exercise that works the glutes. All you have to do is know how to load it properly, work your body as far away from the anchoring post as you have to in order to keep that tension high as you get into full hip extension. No lagging or sagging of the hips at the top. Drive your glutes as far forward as possible by squeezing those cheeks together, and you'll get every single bit out of the exercise. Speaking of trying, you're going to want to try out more than just these supersets. I actually named 12 of the best exercises that everyone should do, superset or not. You're going to want to watch that video over here, guys. You're going to get some great ideas because everybody should have them in their program, especially if you're overlooking them right now. If you're looking for a complete program, guys, I'll lay it out step by step for you over at athleanx.com. And if you haven't done so, make sure you click subscribe and turn on those notifications so you never miss a video when we put one out, starting with this one. Go check it out. See you guys.